Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is the Petalburg Razors going up against the Laverre Constrictors to start off round 2 of the PokeType League TCG Season A2, and as they're looking at their opening hands, let's have a look at this tale of the tape as the Petalburg Razors are currently sitting in 4th place, having gotten that wooden crown last season. They want to stay as far away from that as they possibly can, whereas the Constrictors are sitting one spot out of our top 5, but they want to get back there once again. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Colorless decks? Will it be the Psychic decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And it is going to be that Bombardment deck of the Petalburg Razors going first. They've got 2 Apoms and a Baneri in hand, putting one of those Apoms in the active spot with Baneri on the bench. The Constrictors going with their red chain deck. They put Uxie into the active spot with Azelf on that bench, but they want that Mesprit that they can set up as well. So let's get this match going in this best of 3 series. The Ambipom being pulled for the Petalburg Razors already, and they've got the Rocky Helmet and the Giant Cape. That Rocky Helmet going on to the Apom here, and they do think of putting the Giant Cape onto the Baneri, but they're thinking about what they want to do. They can't put an energy down at the moment, so they send it over to the Constrictors, who do pull the Duskull. They've got their own Giant Cape and Rocky Helmet in hand, but they play that Pokeball to get another basic Pokemon, and now they've got the Mesprit already in hand as well. With those 3 energy, it can go for that Supreme Blast. Unfortunately, we'll have to discard all 3 energy to do that, but it also requires the Uxie and the Azelf to be on the bench when it goes for that move as well. But 160 damage can wipe the Snorlaxes from this Bombardment deck straight off the board, as Uxie getting its first and only needed energy for this Mind Boost. It does do 20 damage, but it can also attach an energy to either Mesprit or Azelf on the bench. They've also put the Giant Cape on it for that extra health, so it is going to lose 20 health from doing damage to this Apom with the Rocky Helmet, but they get their first energy onto the Mesprit as well. And the Razors also now getting the Lopunny. They've got the Ambipom that they put out onto the Apom after putting that Lopunny onto the bench as well, and now they put the Giant Cape onto the Lopunny, taking its health up to 110. These Pokemon only require 1 energy each, so they can go for this double hit. If they can get 2 heads, they will take Uxie straight off the board, but they get a Tails, they get a Heads on the second one, so they still get 40 damage out of the potential 80. Fortunately, it wasn't 2 Tails, but now Uxie is a very easy target. They have pulled the Celestic Elder, this being the Laverre Constrictors. Now, they get a second energy over to that Mesprit, and they're going to go with the retreat. That Uxie could have done another 20 damage. That Celestic Town Elder does get a random basic Pokemon out of the discard pile. They should have left that Uxie there because they know they would have been getting it straight back out, but now they've got the Duskull in the active spot as it comes over to the Petalburg Razors. They've got the Snorlax, who they put onto the bench, getting its first of 4 required energy. As the double hits now coming from the Ambipom, they finally flip the coin. They get the heads. They only get 1 though, so it only does 40 damage to this Duskull, who does have 20 health now remaining. And again, you have to think, could they have left that Azelf, that Uxie in the active spot, or maybe they just didn't want to have to discard all the energy from the Mesprit too soon. As they're thinking about how they want to approach this, they do get a 3rd energy onto the Mesprit, having just pulled their 2nd Azelf as well, and it's the Barry being pulled for the Petalburg Razors. This does allow Snorlax to go on the offense with 2 less energy for that Collapse that does 100 damage. And here it is, the double hit once again from the Ambipom. Gets heads on the first one, the Duskull is eliminated, gets heads on the second one, which does count. That is very important because they want to maximize their damage, as all points and damage done across these 3 matches do count towards our leaderboard. So regardless of the outcome of the first 2 games, that 3rd game is still just as crucial here. The Constrictors thinking about how they want to approach this now. And they are going to move that Mesprit into the active spot. This can wipe the Ambipom off the board. They've just pulled the Dusclops as well. I'm sure they wish they had that Dusknoir close by. They are going to get an energy onto the Uxie. And here it is, that Supreme Blast, 160 damage. This will wipe Ambipom clean off the board. But Snorlax can come in and do easy damage to the Mesprit. They don't know that the Razors have that Barry ready to go in hand. And here it is, the Snorlax in the active spot. It does do 100 damage, and they've just pulled their second Snorlax as well, immediately putting that onto the bench. They may look like different cards, but it is just the artwork. The active Snorlax is that promo set A that they could still draft from in Season A2 here, and they are going to go with the Collapse after activating that Barry supporter card to take the Mesprit off the board. Now, Mesprit is the only one that can wipe out Snorlax in one turn, so the Constrictors need Snorlax to remain asleep as they are about to choose who they want to put into the active spot. And they do go with the Uxie into the active spot. The Razors need to flip ahead, and they do so. Snorlax has already awoken from that slumber. And the Constrictors pull a Cyrus, but no Pokemon on the bench of the Razors have taken any damage yet. They play the Celestic Town Elder, but they pull the Duskull. They wanted the Mesprit. That is not the card they needed. The Duskull immediately going onto the bench and does get an energy, so maybe they are hoping that they can get a Dusknoir out of this deck. They do go with the Mind Boost, doing 20 damage to the Snorlax, putting an energy as well onto the Azelf, who can target any of the opposing Pokemon with that Psychic Arrow, the second Ambipom being pulled for the Petalburg Razors, and a fourth energy onto this Snorlax. Another Collapse, and Uxie has been squished out of this game as Snorlax falls asleep. I'm not even sure it's aware of what it's doing, but just like that, the Razors have dominated Game 1 with this Bombardment deck over the Red Chain deck as we immediately go into Game 2. And once again, sorry, this time it is the Razors flipping heads, and they are using that Fast Days deck. Actually, I do believe they went first in the last game, as it's the Distortion World deck of the Laverre Constrictors, and it is the Chatot. They've got the Starly and the Staravia, the two Starlies and Staravia, plus another Barry. That Staraptor can capitalize on the Barry, just like the Snorlax did earlier on. There are two Giratinas in hand for the Laverre Constrictors. They do put one into the active spot, leaving the other one in hand for the time being. They've got the Professor's Research as well as the Chatot is in the active spot. The Razors pull their own Professor's Research from this Fast Days deck, playing that immediately. And already they've got the Staraptor, but they also get the Cyclizar, who only requires one energy, and they send it over to the Laverre Constrictors, who pull their Rocky Helmet. You have to think, and they are playing that Professor's Research, getting an additional 2 cards from their deck. They get the Pokeball, and they get the Ghastly here in hand. And with this Pokeball, they could potentially get a Clefairy, but instead they get the Rotom out of this deck that can also target any opposing Pokemon on the bench. And the Ghastly goes onto the bench alongside Rotom as Giratina gets its first energy. 3 required to go on the offensive with that Spooky Shot, but as long as it has one energy onto it, it can retreat for 0 cost. The Petalburg Razors pulling their X speed, and they get that Staravia down onto the bench, and they immediately put an energy onto the Staravia. They're not putting one on the Chatot. They don't want to go on the offensive yet with this Fury attack. They do have a look at it, conscious that they've just put that energy onto the Staravia. They clearly want to set up this Staraptor very quickly without having to worry about Chatot taking any recoil damage from the Giratina. It is the Team Rocket Grunt being pulled for the Laverre Constrictors now, as no damage has been done in this game too. And it is the Rotom getting the 1 energy on it. They are going to retreat the Giratina, putting the Rotom into the active spot, and with this dash attack, it can target either of those 2 benched Pokemon, immediately going for the Staravia. They don't want to have to contend with a potential Staraptor, who is about to enter this match shortly, as Jigglypuff has just been pulled for the Petalburg Razors. And they're thinking about where they want to put this second Psychic energy on this Colorless deck, using the same energy as the opposing team. And there it is, the Staraptor with its second energy. They play the X speed so they can retreat this Chatot, 0 cost to do so. And this Staraptor, who does require 3 energy, but remember that Barry is in hand, so they can immediately go with this Brave Bird. 130 damage, but it does do 20 damage to itself in the process, and it does wipe this Rotom off the board, taking the first point for the Petalburg Razors. And they do want to win this in the first 2 games. Unfortunately for the Laverre Constrictors, they did lose their first 2 games in their first series last round. They were able to win that 3rd game, but they don't want to repeat. They want to take this to a Game 3, as they just pulled a Clefairy. They're having a look at their Clefables, thinking about how they want to approach this. Now looking at that Astonish of the Ghastly, they're not going with the Ghastly. It looks like they're leaning towards the Clefairy or the Giratina for this energy. Clefairy requiring 2, Giratina requiring 3, so neither of them can go on the offensive yet, but that Ghastly cannot outlast the Staraptor either. The Moonblast for Clefable does require 3 energy, and they are going to play that Team Rocket Grunt. They want to get both energy here. They require 2 heads in a row. They get 1, they needed a second, and it's a tail, so it stops the coin flips. They do get 1 energy though off of the Staraptor, which means it will not be able to go for this Brave Bird on this coming turn, but they pull another Barry, so forget what I just said, because they are going to play that immediately. So this Brave Bird requires 2 less energy to go on the offensive. They're still going to put an energy on it, preparing for the following turn. But again, this Brave Bird, 130 damage, and Ghastly is wiped off the board and is the second point for the Petalburg Razors. And they absolutely controlled game 1, and at the moment they are in full control of game 2, because I cannot see how they can get this Staraptor off the board. They do get a 3rd energy here onto this active Giratina. They're looking at the Clefables, they're thinking about what they can do, and they're just going for the spooky shot. This will leave Staraptor with 20 health remaining, but I don't think the Petalburg Razors mind. They know they can go for the win. They get an energy onto the Staraptor. It is going to get that 20 recoil damage, but it goes for the Brave Bird, and it takes Giratina off the board, and just like that, the Petalburg Razors have won this series. They do lose the Staraptor in the process, so the Constrictors do manage to get a point, but this has been domination from the Petalburg Razors so far, and they want to continue this in game 3. They want the clean sweep. And once again, the Petalburg Razors are going first. This time it is with their Hall of Origin deck. This was the only deck of theirs that did actually lose last round, whereas it's the Celestic Dream deck of the Constrictors, the only deck of theirs that did win last round. They want to try and repeat that here as they put the Cresselia in the active spot up against that Porygon in the active spot for the Petalburg Razors. They've got the Rocky Helmet, and they've just pulled the Porygon 2, and they've already got that Porygon Z in hand. They put that Rocky Helmet onto the Porygon. Now Cresselia does require 2 energy to go on the offensive, and they have to be Psychic Energy, whereas the Razors want that Porygon Z online so that they can generate random energies for the Laverre Constrictors who want those Psychic Energies. There's the Togepi being pulled for the Constrictors. As the Professor's Researchers play, they get that second Cynthia in hand, and they get the Drifblim. Now they've got the Drifloon in hand as well. They're gonna want that Togetic so that they can try and get this Togekiss online that they've also got in hand. But here's the first energy for the Cresselia. They will be able to send it back over to the Razors. Now the Razors need to make sure they put that Porygon 2 online, as they've just pulled the Arceus, putting that onto the bench. Here it is, Porygon 2, because Porygon could not outlast that Cresselia, but Porygon 2 only requiring 1 energy can go on the offensive with this Sharpen, doing 30 damage. And I do apologize because I think I just said that Porygon would be eliminated. I think it has 60 health. Cresselia only does 50 with that Moonlight gain, but it can restore 20 of its own health in the process. They don't want to use the supporter because that Cynthia only works with the Togekiss, but there it is, that 20 health being restored for Cresselia. It does lose 20 health though from that Rocky Helmet here, as the Celestic Town Elder has been pulled, and they're looking at that Porygon Z because they don't want to lose the Porygon 2 right now. Porygon Z with this Buggy Beam does do 80 damage, but it requires a 3rd energy to do so. So they need Porygon Z to outlast this Cresselia for the time being, as that second Drifloon has been pulled for the Constrictors, and they do move an energy to that active Drifblim. And they are going to go on the offensive once again with this Moonlight gain, 50 damage to the Porygon Z, 20 health being restored once again, but it's immediately lost to that Rocky Helmet recoil damage. And now the Razors can get a 3rd energy, as they've just pulled Bidoof as well. That is going to go onto the bench with that Super Fang. But Porygon Z with this Buggy Beam, it can take Cresselia off the board, but it's going to change the next energy generated for the Laverre Constrictors. And it is going to become a Metal Energy. This is not good for the Constrictors. This is where this bugginess comes into play, because they need Psychic Energies right now. They move the Drifblim into the active spot. It can outlast a hit from the Porygon Z. Maybe they're trying to buy themselves some time. Hopefully they try and set up this Togekiss, but things are not looking good for the Laverre Constrictors. Absolute madness and chaos with this Buggy Beam from the Petalburg Razors. They're looking at their hand, trying to figure out what they can do. There's not much, so they send it over to the Petalburg Razors, who pull a second Porygon 2. They don't have a second Porygon yet, and they're going to get a first energy onto either the Bidoof or the Arceus. They're thinking about their options, and they go with the Bidoof as the Buggy Beam continues, going for this Drifblim for the first time. leaving it with 20 health, and now they've generated a fighting type energy for the Laverre Constrictors. This Porygon Z causing absolute madness on the side of this Celestic Dream deck. And the Constrictors just thinking about how they can try and buy themselves some time. They've got that second Drifblim in hand. They move the Cresselia onto the bench as well. And they need to try and buy themselves some time in hope that a Psychic type energy will be generated in their energy zone as they move the Cresselia now into the active spot so that they can outlast the turn from this Porygon Z. Again, it's in absolute control. The Dawn has been pulled for the Petalburg Razors. They get an energy onto the Arceus. They're having a look at the Bibarels, but they're not worried about evolving that Bidoof right now. And another Buggy Beam, 80 damage to this Cresselia, and it is now a water type energy being generated for the Laverre Constrictors, who have just pulled their giant cake. They put that second Drifblim online. They put that water energy onto the Togekiss. They're still yet to pull a Togetic, and they're going to have to leave that Cresselia in the active spot. The second Porygon Z has been pulled for the Petalburg Razors. They get a second energy onto the Arceus and another Buggy Beam to take the Cresselia off the board, and that is now 2 points for the Petalburg Razors as the Constrictors can do absolutely nothing about it in Game 3. And the Constrictors opt in to put that Drifblim 90 health so it can outlast the Buggy Beam of the Porygon Z. They've just pulled the Unknown that does have that check. It can check the next card of either the opposing side or their own deck. And they are going to play it. They're going to look at what they pull next. It is going to be the Professor's Research, as they've got a Darkness energy that they can place down now. And with Unknown, they could actually do damage, but Unknown cannot outlast a hit from this Porygon Z, whereas Drifblim can. And it comes back over to the Petalburg Razors. They get a third energy onto the 4 required for this Arceus here, as they're looking at their Porygon Z, thinking about what they want to do, and they've got that Dawn in hand. They can actually move an energy from a benched Pokemon to their active Pokemon. They're going to retreat the Porygon Z. They're going for the win. They're going for the clean sweep with the Dawn. They can move an energy from Porygon Z to Arceus, getting its 4th energy required, and with this Power Blast, 100 damage to wipe Drifblim off the board, and it is a clean sweep for the Petalburg Razors. Absolute domination and buggy madness over the Laverre Constrictors, and this will move the Colorless decks to the top of the leaderboard, as next round they will be going up against the Turffield Ebonies, whereas for the Constrictors, they have to try and recollect their thoughts, as next round they're going up against the Mellow Rumbles. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.